Okay, dear Sarah, welcome to the Love Lizzy podcast. Thank you for being here.
Thank you. I do love Lizzy.
I'm so excited to spend this time deeply with you. You are an educator in Portland. I love Oregon. I love what Oregon stands for. I love the value system of that place, the respect for nature, and the attempts that I have seen of the government and the civic leaders and the community to try to be a sacred place for people. As an educator and someone who's been with our children and seeing them grow up, you have your own children. Talk about the state of education, what you're seeing, as well as like what your hopes and dreams are.
Oh my gosh. Well, we have to shape a better future because this business is not working. I'm not in Portland Public anymore. Towards the end of the pandemic, they opened a fully online school because while I was trained as a mainstream high school math teacher and very quickly was moved to teaching online just because of the job that I had. And that was 14 years ago. It turned out I loved it. I had a knack for it. I have tried to use it and like get other teachers who are in classrooms to really use it as a tool. You don't have to have everything online, but technology can be an asset because it can be a second or third person in the room if you think about it like that. If, as educators especially, we switch our perspective from being the holders of knowledge to the facilitators of knowledge. Teachers are brilliant, especially if you're an expert in your content. You know all of the things. If I think of myself as a guide to helping children, one, be able to find resources themselves without cheating or plagiarizing. I Google formulas all of the time. You can do that as a resource and still figure the answer out by yourself. If a student isn't learning the thing that I'm trying to get them to, we're going to find a different way or adapt, but it's not a personal failure of mine.
What are you noticing the children need? What is different now than 10 years ago? And how are you applying that?
Raising children with technology is substantially different than it was 6 years ago. This is where leveraging technology in education is helpful. There can be 5 different youth happening in the same classroom, and you're managing how your students are utilizing you through the pathway that they have within the technology. I've been teaching online for 14 years, and the one constant is, oh, well, they're gonna have computers replace teachers. Nope. There's not less of a need 14 years later for teachers. So that's a misnomer. AI does not have emotional intelligence. Yes, they can put in a prompt and get a paper written out for them, but they're not learning anything from that. So you do still need a human being. And the beauty, I guess, or what I see as the beauty of my job is the way to do online instruction correctly is to have your base standards, course knowledge, whatever it is that you want students to learn, done before they start. We have a self-paced program. You can move as slowly or as quickly as you can move. I actually don't believe in giving students Fs. If you never started learning information, you didn't actually fail in learning it. You just didn't.
You give the F, then it's a determination. And what I hear from you is like learning can be somewhat fluid and it advances over, we all know that instinctually, but we don't necessarily talk about it. It's like it's layers, right?
And you can't systematize flexibility when you need to have a system because there has to be rules. And if we're going to provide money for students, like these are the requirements for you to get money, all of the logistical, bureaucratic pieces. My job currently, I am in a one classroom space with 6 teachers. We are blessed that we are an amazing team. We definitely have our emotional idiosyncrasies. For the most part, we are able to address conflicts within our system because We all know we're good at our jobs. We all know we care about kids and we have a lot of respect for each other. So, like within ourselves, we are fluid. More and more, we're getting the like this, like you have to do this way, you have to do this way. Oh, we can't do that anymore. Because administrators, one in Oregon, administrators don't actually have a lot of protection. Teacher unions in Oregon are very strong, but administrators don't actually have a union. So they're basically at will employees. And while you do need cause to let one go, ultimately, they're pretty conventional thinkers, and not a lot of them are willing to stick their neck out to push for change in education, even if it's the right thing to do. And I mean, and we find that with people too, right? Like it's hard to put you're living. I've gotten in a couple like legitimate fights with my principal this year, one of which I went full red. Like my team, there were three different people who like, oh, stop, right? Like somebody's head went down because their nervous system was shutting down because of how angry I was. I could not, none of those interventions made me stop talking. And I came home and I was like, I'm gonna get fucking fired. Like, oh, like I was like, it's done. Like he's not gonna renew my contract. And my husband, as an outsider, has, I don't want to say has had to deal with that, but has like that's a thing for him, right? For my entire career, he's been like, please don't say that. Like, please, like I know that you're right. We know that you're right, but this is your livelihood. And like without your livelihood, there are a lot of things about our life that would change. Please don't get fired. And so like that piece of it makes actual change really hard because one, if you're in the district office, like you're dealing with hiring requirements and grievances and funding from the state and like and requirements from the state, right? Like nobody's allowed to have phones anymore. How are we going to do that in all of our schools with 6 weeks notice? Like what does that look like? Also, we have this mental health. Also, oh, this kid got in a fight and now we're being sued. So there's all these other things that are happening that actually really distract from the purpose. And then on top of that, you have teachers who have their own problems. Like there's a lot of
They're human.
they're human. We're all human. And being a human is very, very difficult right now. And right, it's sort of like your own children. I had a student yesterday. I've been her advisor for 3 years. She was not on track to graduate at the beginning of this year. And something happened in the last 6 months, and she is knocking out work like I have never seen. She'll be like, okay, I'm done with all my classes. Can I have another one? Like, okay, can you give me another one? Can you do this? What about this? How many credits do I need? How many more classes total do I have to take in order to graduate? And because we're an online program, I can do that for her. I know what she needs. I have the things. Okay, I'm going to give you this and I'm going to give you this. We're going to add these two classes. Like, this is how much you have left. Here's your checklist. And she also takes care of her grandmother during the day because she's living in an apartment with her family and her aunt's family and her grandmother because it's really expensive to live in the Portland metro area and food is insane. But I haven't seen her. Like she doesn't come in, she doesn't usually like need very much from me in terms of most of the things. And yesterday we're in advisory. I've talked to her a couple of times because it's the end of the term. And I look at my Google Voice for work and she says, I'm coming into the school. And I was like, oh, awesome. Like, awesome. Great. I haven't seen you in such a long time. That's fantastic. We finish advisory and I turn around and she's sitting at the table. And I was like, oh, hey, what's going on? She comes over and immediately bursts into tears. And we talked for like 40 minutes. She got in a big fight with her mom, who's also struggling, who's in an unhealthy relationship with a man who's not working, so he's not contributing. Her dad passed away when she was in the 8th grade. Weird. Her dad passed away when she was in the eighth grade and she didn't earn any credit her freshman and sophomore year because there was no support or any kind of anything to teach this child how to grieve. Weird.
Blame her. Make her a scapegoat kid. Make it about her behavior. Make it about how she's not following the rules. Make it about how she's not conforming.
Yeah, she's not putting in enough effort.
Her heart is literally bleeding out of her chest, and she
Right.
mechanisms for losing a parent in eighth grade.
Right. She must not care about her education. Clearly, her mom doesn't care about her education either. If she did, she would be making her do this because it's so easy to make children do things.
Right? Like, just come on. You
Right.
all that language.
And so, luckily, I mean, we talked for 40 minutes. She cried. I hugged her. I told her none of it was her fault and that she wasn't wrong. He was the adult. Like the argument and all of the things, like that is not actually the appropriate way for an adult to respond to you in that situation. You should not have any guilt about that. And, I understand hearing someone say that to you does not make it go away. And if nobody is saying that to you, how do you know that it's not your responsibility to take that on?
So, how do you know it's not true?
Right. Right.
In that development of a young adult, not adult, but almost teenager, there isn't a lot of nuance. Things are black and they're white. And it's like, well, they said this about me, or they said this to me, or they told me this was it. And they're the power figure. They're the one I'm supposed to trust and lean on for my stability and my understanding and my worldview. And if that's what they're telling me, then it must be true, right?
Right. Because also I want their approval because really what I want is to be loved and accepted for who I am. And if they don't love me, there must be something wrong with me.
A lot of things here, Sarah. It's like, and I think there's this argument in the zeitgeist right now, this challenge to all of us of preparing the world for these children. First of all, we one have to prepare the world and we have to prepare them. So it's kind of a twofold thing. And there's this argument that if you go too soft, there's consequence. If you go too hard, there's consequence. And if you're too flexible, there's a consequence to the kid. And if you don't, and so there's all that swirling around probably many of mothers' minds,
Mhm.
many community leaders and organizers' minds of like, that's a lot of coming at us, like a lot of different frameworks, a lot of different whatever. Do I give my kid a phone? Do I not give my kid my phone? Do those social media? Blah, 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 blah. I do need to prepare them for technology. So isn't having a phone part of me preparing them for the world that is just is? It is the world. It is how it works, right? All of those.
And if they don't have a phone and their friends all have phones, then they're outsiders and they're ostracized.
How do we deal with that? Well, we don't know how to deal with that as a society. So how are we going to deal with that as a human one-to-one or one to a few? So
Mhm.
but what I hear that you are telling me, which is actually really good news for me, because when I think about starting a family and becoming a mom, which I hope
Mhm.
to do, I really want to create a flexible world for them, a world where they can potentially like homeschool and get an incredible education and not go into what I don't believe is a system that can actually hold the whole self.
Yeah.
I also want to make sure that they have belonging and skills to make friends and all those things that come with the question of, am I going to engage in this societal structure that I don't actually 100% believe in?
Mhm.
Some good things about it. What is my alternative? And I'm hearing from your experience that this virtual education system, coupled with still real in person touch points, with the combination of expectation and projection of ability. So I believe you can. I know you're having a hard time because all these things are happening, but I still believe in you and I'm going to walk with you as you navigate the complexity of this situation. And so there is validation in that, and there is compassion and grace and understanding, but it's held in combination with an expectation that this person can overcome, that this person can learn and be resilient.
Yeah.
And both of those things, it sounds like a little bit of a magical equation.
Yeah. And I mean, I will tell you at this time, and I say this knowing that I love my job. I actually right now have the best job ever. I mean, I've always been an educator and I've had some good jobs, but where I am right now, there's never been a day so far this year where I'm like, like I don't want to go to work, like this is torture. And it is relentless. Like every day is relentless. But we can hold high academic standards and leave space for the experiences that children are having, right? Like, just like as a parent, you can hold high behavioral standards and still have compassion for the fact that your children may or may not have the skills to meet those expectations all of the time.
Do you feel like, but you have to be able to do that within yourself in order to give that?
I do feel that you have to be able to, I mean, yes, you have to be able to you have to be able to forgive yourself on the days that you don't do well. Having compassion for yourself is really, really difficult often, especially for women. And actually, I shouldn't say that for women and men, because the reality is that men between the ages of 40 and 60 also are brainwashed to think that their trauma isn't relevant, and the programs that they have been instilled with in their brains and the expectations and those things, like, we don't talk about that a lot either. um and no, often they don't carry the level of responsibility that women do in relationships and society, but that also doesn't invalidate the fact that their mental health hasn't been a priority for society either.
And also they carry different things. You know,
Yeah,
I think because society is changing so fast, there's this narrative of like the women are doing it all. And don't get me wrong, we are. Okay. And because society is changing so fast, we are also forcing them into that change as well without the pause and the articulation of the shift and what that means for what I'm supposed to carry. And so, passion that we have for ourselves, there are some really good men that are really like coming forward with us and saying like, okay, I see what you're saying here, let me understand that. But it also means that there has to be a base where the articulation of the inability is not a shaming situation, right? So because they don't get it right away, how are we treating them when they don't get it right away?
right.
Same compassion we're trying to hold for ourselves, the same compassion we're trying to hold for our children is the same compassion, we want to try to hold for men if you want to just put them in a singular category, right? But if we think about humans in general, there are differences between men and women, but the nervous system and the brains very similar.
Very similar. And if they, I mean, I've been told I've been told this year that when I'm very passionate about something and I feel strongly or get defensive, that I can come off intimidating. And that shuts people down. Like, often I am coming from a place of gathering information, right? If I did something that wronged you, the only way for me to change my behavior is to know what I did. And if I say, why do you feel like that?
That's a door closing.
Right. Like, nope, never mind. I'm done. I'm done. I don't want to talk to you about this anymore.
A, the fragility of men emotionally, like that's some of the terminology I've heard is like, oh, they're so insecure they can't handle feedback. Well, first of all, no one is anything all or not, right? There's no all or nothing.
Exactly. Exactly.
It's not fragility, it's lack of skill in that scenario, in that circumstance. So we were skilled up on communication and connectivity and emotions. And so that's like my number one skill, right? If you put me in a logic quiz where I have to take a hammer and like
Right.
that's not the skill building I was given. And so the trading of skills, it's like I've been starting to think about it as like wait, you know that. Can you teach me that? And I'll teach you this. And then we're in a totally different dance. Then why can't you meet me here?
And especially if you were a child, right, who, like, if you are an empath who can walk into a room and figure out what's going on and adjust enough to like calm the things down and right, like if you can walk into any room and adapt and you're married to somebody and maybe like on the surface they have the same skill, but the like intuitiveness of reading all of those things and being able to evaluate what's happening ahead of time is probably not the same. So you're already, right, you're already more emotionally intelligent than 80% of the population. And if you think about the skills that men were taught, it seems like men who were raised by single moms, honestly, and had stable childhoods, like have a higher emotional intelligence. But if you were raised in a traditional American family over the last 40 years, no, like that's probably not something that anybody fostered in you. It's just not.
To blame the women at all, but this instinctual nature of taking on the burden of, and I'm not saying that like we're not forced to take on this burden. I'm not trying to say that at all. But what I've been noticing in my own self as a traditional empath my whole life, every room I ever walked in since I was a little girl, I can tell you I could feel everything, I could see everything, and I was always trying to create harmony with my own self. So
Yeah.
myself in front of the conflict to create the harmony, always putting myself in front of the accountability to create the harmony. And that was a skill that I learned to survive an environment where I wanted harmony desperately, right? Not being aware that I still do that and take that burden on is a disservice to myself because I actually can benefit from going into a room and saying before I enter it, I'm not going to do that today. And when I let that responsibility go, when I say, no, I'm not going to overcompensate here, I'm not going to emotionally overcompensate, it actually gives other people in the room the chance to do it.
Mhm.
And that is a really nice feeling.
Uh-huh. And they need to practice.
And they're going to do it really bad at first. I mean, like really bad.
Right. Because how do you learn things, right? You fail. And if you don't ever get that practice, like and I have not like I there are definitely like skills, especially I think because of COVID, like because we had that like weird bubble, right? Where we were take I don't know if we were taking care of more. Like I don't know what it is, but I look at my 18-year-old now and I'm like, "Oh shoot." Like you didn't learn that. Like you didn't learn like whatever that was, right? And right now that's a skill we need to work on because you didn't fail enough as an eighth grader or whatever it was, whenever you were supposed to learn that actually you do have to shower every day. Why? Oh, because you were literally home for a year and a half. You stopped coming to the grocery store with me. You stopped, right? Like all of the things that normally you would have participated with me in normal life, I did by myself because it was dangerous. And so now I'm like, oh, there are things that you're lagging in because I did them too much for you for too long because I was taking care of because I was trying to keep everything right. And so now there is a deficit that we have to figure out how to make up. even though it's that this isn't actually the age appropriate time for you to be learning that.
Yeah. And the grace you're offering yourself and him in order to get to the decision and the practicality of just closing the gap, right?
Right.
So much on the gap, we don't get anywhere.
Right.
If we pass over our fear of the fact that they have a gap, we're stuck in our fear. If we stop and go, ooh, that sucks. There's a gap. Okay, well, we're at a 6. We need to get to a 10. Let's think about what takes us from a 6 to a 7, then a 7 to an 8, an 8 to a 9, and a 9 to a 10. And we don't need to just give that to the children. We
No.
that in ourselves and with the people we love and work with and marry and what our parents and all of that. And I think we've gotten away in this society of, I love therapy. I have been in therapy. There have been therapists that have literally like kept me on this earth, especially with all the loss I've had. But the modern vernacular about forgiveness and understanding and repair,
Hmm.
not really that fair. And it doesn't really account for the reality of what human beings are trying to do here and what we're dealing with and what's going on. And, I will never tell a woman to stay somewhere where she's being harmed. Like, there are, of course, so many situations where there is some black and whiteness. And I want to make sure we are clear about that as a society. I think we could be a lot clearer about that. But then there's these other places where we've applied a black and whiteness. It's almost like we've applied it to the wrong place.
Yeah.
All this nuance and like, well, they didn't mean it. They didn't, in these areas where it's like, wait a minute, that seems kind of obvious. But over here, you have no compassion and grace. I'm confused. So I feel like this conversation is even helping my brain think about like these approaches to connectivity and relationship and community. And I was even thinking this morning as we were preparing, like, I keep talking about like women are the community builders and we're the ones that are taking care of the communities. And that's not to say that men are not. So I always want to make sure I say that. And then I was thinking, okay, what about the busy woman who has multiple children, a low wage job, like she's got everything. She's just right here. Like if you could see me talking, if you're listening to this podcast, like you could see my hand in front of my face because the water is high, right? And like you were talking about this student, there's been a death in the family, there's been a rupture in the marriage, like all these things are happening around this young woman. And so I think about when we say women are the community caretakers and the responsibility we feel when we hear that, like, oh, well, am I not a good enough woman because I'm not volunteering in my community and I don't have capacity? No, 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 no. Let's really be specific about what we mean. You could be taking care of your community by literally just pausing for a moment when you're about to extrovert your rage,
Right.
yourself have 30 seconds to breathe. That is you taking care of your community.
Yeah. And or taking or going out to lunch, right? Like taking your child out to lunch. That's you taking care of your community. That's you taking care of yourself and them. And I would say the one thing that in my professional life I learned, and the way that I learned it actually is I don't know where I would be without my therapist. We've been together 8 years. We actually were about to terminate and then my dad passed. Uh, and so we've been together, but the thing that she taught me was stop taking other people's dynamite. You can listen, you can, I mean, and then there's that other thing, like, do you want me to listen or do you want me to help you fix it? Like, what am I doing? Because especially with my kids, like, I would skip that whole thing, right? They'd come to me and they would give me an emotional problem and they would tell me how they would feel. And I would be like, okay, this is what we're going to do. She is the one who taught me, and I am not always successful at this still, but she is the one who taught me, nope, like, just let him be upset. Just sit with him. And my 18-year-old is an empath. Like, bro's got a little bit of autism. Um, there were rough times for us. And when I first started to like, when he would have a crash out, literally just sit with him in his room until he was able to regulate. It was the most uncomfortable I have ever been in my life. To like just not say anything, just like let him have his head on my shoulder, like not be doing anything, right? Because like, if I'm not doing something, am I really even a person in the world? And it's also how I learned to sit with my own pain. Because ultimately, our children teach us substantially more about ourselves than we might ever learn, because you have to face the thing because it's right in front of you.
And the fear that if I feel this, I won't be able to get out of it.
Yeah.
That's not even a conscious fear. That's like an animalistic fear, like danger, danger, high emotion, like just abort out of it, like pop button out of it, drink something, eat something, and I think what I love about connecting the dots from what you were saying earlier to now is that like we've been taught that you have to go in all the time, go into it. Like as women, I will just say, in a modern woman, I've been taught like go in, confront, take it on. And there's a combination to that. There's a difference between going to lunch and sitting across from your kid and looking them in the eye and avoidance. There's a difference between saying, I know we're having hard emotions and you're not feeling like yourself today, and I'm not going to bypass that, but let's go to a movie and just let our system kind of have a minute. That's not avoidance. That's conscious decision making.
Yeah. Well, and actually, Thomas asked me, I don't know, we had a crash out a few weeks ago, and he was like, "Why can't we? I want to talk about this right now. Why can't we talk about this right now?" And I looked at him, I said, "Really, bud?" Like, I was like, "I don't actually like to talk about things in the moment. Like, I actually think it's better if we take a breath and we talk about it tomorrow, because like, stuff doesn't always come out right when you're in the moment. And if we wait until tomorrow, then you'll feel better and I'll feel better. And we can have a conversation about what happened instead of an argument."
And Sarah, I would also commend you. And this is what I say to a lot of moms who come to me and say, my daughter's so angry with me. I'm like, good. They're like, what do you mean? I'm like, because you provided a sacred space where she knows anger is okay and that she can be her whole self. And she's trusting you with her anger. And that's secure attachment. So your son's ability to hear you say that to him and trust that not only are you two going to be okay, that this does not have to be reconciled because actually nothing's really wrong. We're just feeling a lot of things. There's nothing to repair because we're solid.
Right.
Then that a child or any human can actually allow for that space. You can't allow for that space if you don't feel safe, if you
Yeah.
don't in the relationship. And so the power of the connection that you've created with him, where you can say that to him and he can trust that you mean what you say. And he can know that tomorrow you will be there to have that conversation. Not mom does this and then we never talk about it. Not
Right.
mom does and then I just have to sit with my feelings by myself. No, mom does this. And then in a day we go to lunch and I get all this space and time for my mom to give me the opportunity to express myself and to help.
Right.
That's like so beautiful. And it feels so easy, but it's not. It's not.
And it takes a lot of time. I mean, like, the one thing in parenting that I've like worked my hardest is, and I do it, I mean, I do it in my job too. Like, if I mess up, I take responsibility. I apologize. You're right. I yelled. Yes, I overreacted. No, I shouldn't have said that. That actually was inappropriate of me, because I am, in fact, the adult. And also, I was really angry. And maybe even, right? Like, I was really angry because, like, I was really angry because when I was a kid, this happened to me, or because the farther you get into like where those immediate reactions come from, then the more you can help them understand, right? Even the way I talk about addiction with my kids, it's like, your grandfather was an alcoholic. He was a functional alcoholic. He was a happy alcoholic. And nonetheless, he was an alcoholic, and he was an alcoholic my entire life. And these are some strategies that I used over the course of my life to deal with that and to manage it. You may have seen them in your own childhood in terms of when we saw grandma and grandpa, the things that happened, the rules and boundaries that were around when whatever, right? Like, and then ultimately, the thing that killed him was, in fact, the alcohol. So you really need to consider the choices that you make in terms of how you use substances in your life.
And the vulnerability that that requires, and the line that you walk as a parent and as a teacher and as anyone that's got power over someone, right? Because adults have the power, they do. And to know the difference between like trauma bonding about information and actually using the information to facilitate understanding and growth, like that's a fine line. It is. And so walking that feels dangerous as a parent or as a teacher, or, it's like, what is the line? And I feel like what I'm hearing from you is like sometimes you're going to cross it trying to find it and
Yeah.
cross it not even knowing you're crossing it until you've crossed it. And then it's about accountability and clarification.
And not, I mean, this has come easier to me professionally for sure, because if I carried everything home with me, right? Like I wouldn't be a functional human being, especially right now, especially working with the population that I work with everything that's going on in the world. Like I would curl up in a ball and cry all of the time because it really is that hard for students and families at this moment. Um, but you can't take somebody else's lack of initiative or behavior personally. Like I mean, and that's the whole dynamite piece, right? Like it's not my fault that my child has ADHD and is incredibly hyperactive and does impulsive things at school and gets in trouble. It's not my fault. Can I help him?
If you take it as that way, then you make it about you and then you can't see him.
Right. And you can't advocate for him because you're too sad or too angry or like whatever it is. And advocating for him and holding him accountable for his behavior are actually different things, right? Because we can hold him accountable for his behavior and still provide supports for him so that he has access to the education that he deserves.
And that feels to me like the kind of summary of what you've been doing to approach education and building a family. Like both these things need to be true. And I will also say that like sometimes I hear and I have experienced myself as an intuitive child and person that people think you're protecting your kids by hiding the information, but they feel it. So the balance of honoring that they're awake and alive in the same environment that you are and respecting them enough to honor that while also finding the way to communicate at the level to which they can receive the information.
Right. Right. We can talk to kids in an age appropriate way about all things, right? Like what do we tell young children um in terms of avoiding predators? Your private parts are your private parts. You don't show strangers your private parts, right? Like that's the same thing as telling a 16-year-old like if somebody tries to take off your clothes, that's bad. But you can say that to a 2-year-old and they will understand. Little boys and their penises, it's a thing. It's a thing. It starts like it's a thing, right? Oh, yes. Where do we do that? We do that in private. We do that in the bathroom. We do that in our bedroom. We don't do that around anybody else, right? You're not shaming them. You're not telling them what they're doing is wrong. and you're setting a boundary for them of what is appropriate. And right, that line is actually like always appropriate. Like that's all, it's always the same line. Like until you get into a consensual relationship, right? Like
It's not going to change. And that's the habit building from that 0 to 7, 7 to 12, where the brain's neuroplasticity is so like available for formation. And those are the habits. It goes back to the habit of lunch with no distractions. It goes back to right? It's like the habit of hiking when we've got big emotions, the habit of taking a break. That's the power of education.
And the other thing I want to touch on before we end is the place that we're in society right now. So I was lucky enough, I have since taken time away from it, which is sad and necessary. But I was accepted to a educational leadership program at Boston College. And I was able to do 2 full terms, and it was legitimately like the most hopeful experience that I've had in a really long time. The educators who were in my cohort, the information that we talked about, the professors that I had, it renewed my hope in the ability of education to actually be what it could be, not only for teachers, but for society. We read an article about, education in a little town in Maine 60 years ago. And the main thing that you get from that is it's what you talked about. The moms who are on the charity boards, who were home in the afternoons, who watched over the kids, like the neighbors who could see if the bike was out. The community that used to part be because you just had more time.
Work these outrageous jobs or multiple jobs, like that capacity is not there. And then we blame them that they don't have the capacity. Are you fucking kidding me?
And churches were the center of community, and churches took care of their community. And I do think that that is still true, right? For a lot of churches. Like if you are a member of a church, you have a community, and you likely have community members who will take care of you. And as religion and participation in churches decreases in the United States, one, there's no like, these are the standards of society. Also, when people in power are getting away with crimes every day, like how do you actually enforce to a child that you're not supposed to do immoral things because there's not actually accountability in this, like in the structure as a whole, right? But that's a different podcast. But especially since COVID, what is the other constant that we have in society?
And also, I think because religion has also failed us in the modern, probably always failed us. It fails us and it helps us, right?
Hmm.
Where do the people go that don't want religion to be their core value system? And I will even give the example. It's like a lot of people ask me why Love Lizzy is where we are. And I live alone on this 1 acre farm with my really big, beautiful dog. Um, in a pretty like rural community where there's higher crime than in a less community like this. I don't know what vernacular to use, but basically, there's more affluence miles away. And so
Uh-huh.
and then of course, not that this is something I believe is one dimensional, but when you have lower income and more struggle, then there's higher crime because people are just trying to survive. And so things happen that wouldn't happen in an affluent community.
Absolutely.
Like, you live there by yourself? Like, are you okay? And I'm like, okay, first of all, I've never said this on the podcast, but I salt my property and there's rosemary at my front door, so I'm good to go. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
There's hearts all over the place in many forms, shapes, and forms. So I'm spewing love into the neighborhood. And I know the children. And the children bike onto my property to see my dog, who they know. And
Right.
know what is available here, and I give them cuts of rosemary and I welcome them with showers of love. So I am the sacred space. I'm
Yeah.
all about them. I make sure their parents know me. I'm not letting them in my, like there's boundaries to community that when, they're other people's children, but out in the open where everyone can see them. I am wrapping my arms around these children. I am talking to them at the bus stop. I am asking them why they don't have their shoes on. What happened to your shoes? I am giving them things for Halloween. It's like that is a church. It is a church. That's what church is, right? I
Yeah.
know I can ask this person for help. And when I don't need help, I can trust this person to be kind and loving to me. And so that opportunity for us to build churches in quotes is about the what that church represents.
Right.
And that is what we've gotten away from because our capacity individually is hijacked by a society that is not making that the value system.
Well, and a society that doesn't and not that like the members of society don't want it, right? But when you have strong communities, especially if they are an educated community, it's harder to have power over them. It's harder to make them believe that this kind of survival is the way it's supposed to be. And life does get easier. And this is my, I don't know, my passion project right now. It is like, what does it look like? What would it look like if school were the center of the community? And not just that, like, school would be a safe place for children, but also where parents would have a voice. Also, where we were growing food and cooking food and feeding from the ground so that all children were seeing what it actually looks like or could look like. What if we had a tinker shop or something like, right? What if you broke your toaster was broken and you dropped it off in the shed and somebody could take it home and fix it? Or we had a buy nothing store. Or we partnered with places like TerraCycle and Ridwell that actually recycle things that aren't curbside recyclable so that it was easy for people to do the things that actually benefit the world. Because one, it was centralized and it's already a place that most people have to go on a regular basis.
Spaces curated with intention, with a higher vision in mind is all we're asking.
Right.
A dramatic shift. This actually doesn't take much capital at all.
It's not expensive.
Literally, we are building a community farm here. Like, granted, I'm the farmer, so there's not a lot of fruit right now. But like, before I jumped on here, I spent an hour fertilizing a bunch of fruit trees.
Right.
I know that right now it's not what I think it's going to be, and it's not the perfect Love Lizzy, and it's in motion. But I can see 5 years from now that when we caretake properly and we start to build the ecosystem, that every one of my neighbors is getting fresh fruit.
Right.
Everyone is getting fresh vegetables, and every one of those children that saw me planting it and came over and I hosed their feet off because they got in the mud, like they're going to be coming to my door and being like, "Hey, can I volunteer here? Hey, I need an after school job," right? And it's not taking a lot for me to do that, but being present in the vision and holding possibility in my mind. And I was going to ask you as we wrapped up, like wave a magic wand and tell me the world you see, but you just answered it. And I mean, I think, is there anything else you want to articulate on that question related to what you just said that people should hear and think about?
My two like biggest things probably is like that is the first one. When Loke went into kindergarten, I had just started like I think it was like I'd been teaching for 2 or 3 years. And and I said to him, high school is not going to be like this when you get there. And it is. It hasn't actually changed at all, you know. And when he went into high school, I was like, damn, what? Shit. And so now, I mean, now it is that. Like now my goal at the moment is to find a piece of property, build a school, like write a proposal for a charter school, build a pre-K 12 thing and do all of those things with intention so that there is a model for what public education should look like. Because this is what education should look like. Children should be outside. We should not be in classrooms. The system is not working. the like traditional, you start school in kindergarten and you graduate in 12th grade and you manage to stay in the same community for the entire time, like that is waning. That is less and less percentage of the population than it ever has been before. The amount of movement that children go through in their K-12 career is substantial. Not all schools are created equally. And it doesn't even have to necessarily do with the socioeconomic status of the community, right? Like it has to do with the administration and the teachers and what the belief of that particular building is. And so that, like, what could we do to save the world? I got it. I like somebody give me $1 million. I'll have it done in a minute.
Like a lot of, and again, I'm not trying to cut out the men at all because I just happen to be friends with women that are teachers. So I'm not saying that the men don't want to do this too. I know they do. But there are a lot of other women, Sarah, that would come to you and form a committee and do a nationwide charter, right?
Hmm.
We can do this in Indiana. I have a woman who's leading the farm agriculture program for the public school. She built a farm because the
Hmm.
mayor cared about it. And the
Hmm.
you're going to help fund this. And our kids are going to learn how to grow food and what it means to have agriculture. We're an agricultural state. These are the
Right.
top needs we're going to have when they're 25. This is what we're going to do to stay alive. Our communities are going to be vibrant. We're going to focus on mental health. And so she has a job creating that, and she has the blueprint. So she could learn to have a meeting with you, and you could have the blueprint for the school system, and she could have the blueprint for the farm.
We have to move away from mass agriculture, right? Like there are entire systems in our society that are no longer sustainable. And the only way to counteract that is to create a circularly sustainable local system that acts as the community and acts as the support and takes the stress of things off of people. And oh, look, the culinary class makes 47 fettuccine Alfredos on Fridays, and you can get one to feed your family for $10. We're taking that burden off of individuals because individualism killed the radio star.
I agree. I agree. Like I feel it in me. My neighbor just helped me for 4 hours last Sunday, and I'm like so full of guilt that him and his wife just like lended me his time when I know they have other stuff going on. But that's because we also have had reciprocal interactions, and I have
Right.
helped experience for them. Not the same. Like I'm not as practical as them, but emotionally, like she just lost her dad, and she called me at 7 in the morning when she had to put him in a home. And she was like, I can't do this. I can't do this. No one's going to take care of him like I would. And I like, it was the day after Thanksgiving, and I saw their number on my phone, and I picked up and I said, what's going on? I just answered the phone.
Yeah.
But that to her, to have a sounding board of how to make that decision and how to move through that difficult decision, and then knowing that this decision was going to lead to the end of his life, it was, I mean, the writing was on the wall, right? And his physicality. But like, that's why they wanted to show up and help me with the project I had, because we're both intentionally creating the circular economy and community where it's like you this, me this, I have this, you have this. What if you took this? I'll give you this. So it's like, can you please come or do that right away?
My mom actually, I don't remember what I was. It was about our school. There's a group of us teachers who do interventions, and I was like, if we could just do that for 2 years, right? And not teach also, it would change our school completely. And my mom, she was like, write Melissa Gates a letter. She was like, it sounds to me like you have a proposal to write this summer, and like you need to send it to all these women who are giving away their fortunes and get somebody to fund that. And so I got a couple proposals turn except also like work is relentless. Um and I'm exhausted.
Yeah. I think a lot of teachers, nurses, all the people that are on the front lines of the affect of these decisions about what our culture is going to be,
Yeah.
prioritize. And when you have somebody on national stage saying the Dow, when our children aren't safe, that's a major dysfunction. That is an illness. That is a That is an addiction illness, an addiction to money, an addiction to profit. And it's not killing them, it's killing us.
It's disassociation in a different way than our phones are, right? Or getting high is, or like whatever it is that you do to manage living. Yeah, people, and not, and there's a lot of, like, I have a lot of hope with this generation and, and like the people who are moving into Congress. I actually had a student yesterday came in and he's Ukrainian. They moved here 4 years ago. They moved to the States 4 years ago. He's lived in a couple other countries also because of his mom's job. And listening to him talk, and I just looked at him and I was like, you need to, I was like, you should go into like you should run for office. And he was like, no, like he was like, I can't. Because I'm not a citizen. And I was like, you could be a mayor, like you can run for city council. You can, right? Like the only thing you can't be is president, but your perspective and the amount of information you have and your ability to make connections with that information. Also, I'm your math teacher, so I know you're intelligent. Even though you weren't actually my student a year ago, like we have developed this relationship where you come in and get a bowl of pretzels and sit and talk to me for 30 minutes. Like, no, you absolutely could change the world if you decided to use your voice for that. If you don't, then that's fine too. But please know that, yeah, that's a real possibility for you and something you should think about.
Or if it's coming to your heart, we're not going to tell you to go do that, but you're coming to me and you're revealing to me this inside part.
Yeah.
Oh, this longing.
Yeah.
Sarah, as the educator and the facilitator and the community builder, are nurturing that longing.
Well, and that's the best compliment I've ever received from another teacher about my parenting, actually, is when Loic was in fifth grade, his teacher said to me, when I'm a parent, I want to be like your mom because she has always let you be who you are. And that's amazing, right? So like and we're sort of opening this door in society, right, about authentic self. But the one piece of parenting that, and I think my parents tried to do this, and they had their own, like they did the best that they could with the things that they had. I'm blessed that my foundational years actually were fully filled with love, even if my first loss was at 4. And so, like, my first major death, I was 4 years old. And it was my mom's middle brother, and he and I were supposed to be best friends. And he died suddenly. And like sequentially after that, I lost many, like I have had more loss in my life of immediate people than almost anybody that I know in the world, except for maybe you, which is probably why we connected so well. Um, but right, like that really shaped the rest of my childhood and who I have become. And like thank God I learned how to deal with grief before my dad passed because it would have killed me. But back to my children, right? Like I very, very intentionally wanted them to be who they were. And and in some ways that's made parenting really hard, right? Because they don't do what I want them to do. They're not, like my oldest, he doesn't want to go to college. He doesn't want to have like even though he's brilliant and anytime he brings me a creation, because his ability to model things in three-dimensional space is phenomenal because of the different experiences that he has had, right? So he'll bring and he'll, and I'm like, oh yeah, I'm like, yeah, art school would suck. Like, you wouldn't have, like, you wouldn't have any fun. You're right. You definitely shouldn't go to college. And then I walk away, right? Like, because he's going to do whatever he's going to do. And I'm going to support him no matter what, because he is a beautiful human being. He is kind. He is thoughtful. And ultimately, that's that's it. Like, chalk that one up to a win. You know what I mean? His not wanting to be president of the United States is not a failure of mine as a parent or whatever, right? Him not wanting to immediately go to a 4-year college, it's not because I did anything wrong. Honestly, at this point in the world, I don't blame him right now. He got to grow up to be the human that he wanted to be. Did I force him to have some experiences that he wouldn't have naturally taken? Absolutely. Why? Because it's important to have experiences that you might not naturally be comfortable with. Does that mean that he's, not going to be successful? No, it means that he doesn't have to spend 8 years unpacking who he was supposed to be.
And doesn't have to have shame for not meeting an expectation that he never understood intuitively to begin with, and would have never understood intuitively, no matter how hard you tried to force him to be something he's not.
So as the teacher, that's also how I approach educating kids. Like, you're capable of whatever you're willing to put the work in to be successful at. If anybody tells you differently, they're wrong. Please don't believe them. And I will not work harder than you to help you be successful. But if you want to put the work in, I will do whatever I can to help you.
Pretty simple, but really profound, like not simple in execution, but simple in concept.
Right.
Being willing to be vulnerable enough to fail at trying to make that a reality is what I feel like we could kind of sum up this discussion about, like, education and parenting and building community. Is like, none of us, there's this thing that I said in the first episode of this season about not being anyone's like guru. I'm just a woman trying to make it in the world, and if I can help someone else by trying to be myself and show up vulnerably, then that's great. But I'm not the all knowing, all powerful Oz. Like, I'm just like you. And these discussions and in this honesty with one another is in this forgiveness of one another and understanding of one another is like the only way I can see it working.
Yeah.
I mess up and I'm going to hurt feelings and I'm going to make mistakes and I'm not going to see things clearly and I'm going to choose the wrong perspective. And those things are going to happen. And hopefully I get better and better as day goes on, but they're going to be surprises and they're going to be things I didn't see coming and they're going to shock me just like they shock anybody else. And teaching your kids that you can accept yourself that way is also how they learn to accept themselves that way. And so that compliment, absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you so much for being here with me and for sharing your perspective and your story. And I know there's so much more we could say, but I do believe that a lot of this dialogue is going to be extremely powerful, especially for the mamas out there that are trying to raise kids and just humans in general that are trying to do the right thing and failing on their way. And like, we see you. And we appreciate you, and please keep trying. We're not going to get there linearly. It's not going to be one path in one way. But if we all come together, like you're saying about the charter school, and bring our ideas and the collective power of that, that's what I see as the solution. So, yeah. It's cool.
I'm ready. The next one, let's bring your friend with the thing and the whatnot. And yeah.
Talk about like school farming. I love it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sarah. This podcast is produced by Love Lizzy. Our editor is Kayla Hill, and the music is by my very own sister, Julia Sabatine. If you like what you heard here, we would love for you to hit the subscribe button. See you next time.